Welcome to InnerSight, Health Optimization with Rudy and Shaun.
Right, here we go. Shaun, we are podcast, we said before, at number 34. So, in our InnerSight, we test, we exercise, we check exercise. And in exercise, we've got our 4 pillars. And we've got stability, flexibility, we've got endurance, and then strength. And we brought someone that's got something in the movement.
Absolutely. It's, I think, almost the core of our whole program is movement and exercise. And then we stumbled upon Cuan Coetzee, and he's written a book about it. So we've asked him to come in and come share the book with us and share his learnings and tell us what we can do.
Dr. Cuan is a chiropractor in London, UK. Written a book about movement as being medicine. And Cuan, very interesting journey. We chatted beforehand. So maybe for our audience, just how did you get to be writing a book as a chiropractor about movement as medicine?
Awesome. Well, yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. We were saying earlier, my brother's an orthopedic surgeon. So for me to be at a table with specialists like yourselves, it's very humbling. So thank you for having me. I have a gift for you, which is the book that I wrote, Why Movement is Medicine. I've signed it for you. So maybe it'll be worth something in the future, but if not, at least it's just a nice gift. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
So I'm a South African trained chiropractor. I've been living in the UK for 6 years now. My journey started, my brother and I both went into the medical field. So my brother was 2 years older than me, so he went to UCT. When I finished school, I actually had the choice. I actually got into medicine, which was tough. But then I also had a choice of doing chiropractic. And then I actually had a third choice of doing triathlon professionally in the States. And I think I was a bit scared of being homesick by going to the States. And I've kind of just fell into the chiropractic profession. So went to Durban, finished there. And then I took a private practice job in East London, Eastern Cape, worked under Dr. Audie there for 2 years and then brought into the practice. And it was in that time where I quickly saw that this whole field, I was seeing people in pain and there was no longevity aspect to it. But it was around the time, 2014, a lot of the brain plasticity science papers were actually busy coming out, and that just triggered something in me. And then fast forward a few years, I was offered the opportunity to go to the UK on a work visa, and I thought if I don't do it when I was 29, I will never do it, and the rest is history. Yeah. So my sports background, I competed for triathlon for the South African team in triathlon under 18 level, and then that was what made me do my masters in triathlon at university level. And then I probably had this dream of being a sports chiropractor, going with sports teams and things. And I went with the England indoor cricket team to New Zealand. And this idea of sports was great. But I think it also hit home that if you're working with sports teams, you're always working on weekends, you're working late hours. And ultimately, you end up treating the sports people's parents and grandparents and kids eventually. So I've, for the last decade, kind of transitioned into just more like a family-based practice. And yeah, that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Great. And I think that probably ties in the reason why you wrote the book is you saw that people in pain stopped moving, and then you almost like you say, you fell into chiropractic medicine. When you are in pain, you either get better and you live longer, or you fall down this slope, and then you have to have a plan to get out of that.
100%. And I think one of the motivations, so I had this random cloud document that I would just write down random patient stories, or if I explained something to a patient that I was like, oh, that was pretty good, I'd write it down somewhere. And I thought maybe one day it will become a book. And then obviously COVID hit, and then for 2 months I was not a chiropractor anymore, I couldn't physically touch a patient. So the book was written, and it became a book during COVID. But in trying to think of the why behind the book, it was to create an educational tool. Because as you guys know, like when a patient understands why they are doing something and properly the reason behind something, that creates an urgency. And urgency is what makes a patient become more compliant. So it's probably the ultimate educational tool, because you're halfway through it now, but there's just lots of random stories in there, motivational stories, like movement isn't just exercise, like movement is, it affects every part of our brain, our self, our psyche, our mood. So yeah, it was designed as an educational tool to help people, motivate them more.
It's very similar to our podcast, because that's exactly what we're doing as well. This is not a sponsored podcast. We don't get any money for doing the podcast. We purely do the podcast to get the information there for people to see if we can improve people's lives.
And to also tie in with what you're saying is what we've realized with our InnerSight 1 program. We had to put in to our program that there's a tick box to say to the client, I've seen this, you've got 3 months. There's the urgency, tick box, 3 months. You need to say you've done it in 3 months' time, because otherwise you don't do things. And that makes absolute sense. So if there's no urgency, then you don't do it. I want to bring it back a little bit to ask you. So you say it's not just exercise as the movement. So what other piece do you see in there? The stretching, Pilates. How do you encapsulate the movement?
So we'll definitely speak about the 4 main pillars later again. But yeah, movement to me, it's not just exercise. Like, it's a physical thing, like you do running or you go to gym. Once you understand that movement is how the brain actually functions, movement is the final pathway of a thought. So even when we assess patients, we're assessing their movement ability. And there might be spasm, which is like that neurological fear of movement protection. So is someone in spasm, or are they just short in those muscles, or are the muscles fatigued because of overuse? So all of these things are just functions of the nervous system. So yeah, it is fascinating. At university, we did dissections in the first and second year, same as you guys would have done. And it blew my mind when we cut open that skull with a blooming angle grinder, and you realize that the brain is so well protected that it only gets stimulation via the movement that comes into the nerves or the education that affects the top-down processing. Like there is no other physical way to get into the brain. So education is a major pillar of affecting the top-down processing of the brain. And then manual therapy, any kind of stimulation therapy from the bottom up, can affect the brain from a bottom-up point of view. And then exercise is the common factor there that actually consolidates that new movement or new pain-free stimulus. So movement is medicine, but movement is neurology, because the brain controls everything in the end.
And if you don't use it, you lose it.
Amen.
Yeah.
But that's quite interesting, though, because we always, and I think probably in our InnerSight even the same, is like people think you have to have a problem to have a plan, but most people need a plan. Like even a person that's already moving, they need a plan how they can stimulate themselves in a different way. So,
it's also that whole. Adding on to that is the movement is like, as we age, we move less, and then that effect is even moving less than normal. So, what I'm trying to say there is that you need to have a plan to protect your body so that you can keep on moving. We're not jumping like kids anymore, and we're starting to do more desk jobs and things. And then you think movement is exercise. You think that you need to go to the gym or join a club or whatever, but actual movement is in what we do day to day. And that's the part where I think in your book you also address that, which I quite liked, about movement is more than just exercise.
Yeah. My wife, she is stunning, but when I met her, she did not exercise. Not that she actually needs to, but in her education and how she was brought up, she never thought of exercise as part of health. It was just something that you did at PE or PT at school. And then weird people did marathons and weird people exercised and like went to the gym. She never thought of exercise as a health thing. So then back to the book, like hopefully some random people might end up coming across this book and they might actually read it. And then they might be like, wow, okay, movement is actually part of life. It's not just for people who do marathons. And then back onto that use it or lose it principle. Once people understand how the brain works about protecting itself, like the brain always wants to try and be safe or protect itself. So that's often where pain comes in, is the brain's trying to protect something. But even movement, if you don't keep certain ranges of motion in joints, the brain's like, we don't need to do that anymore. So it starts to physiologically restrict movement. And then you think about 5 years later, you want to go lift that heavy fridge, and your back and your body is not conditioned to it, because it hasn't been doing that consistently.
Let's make it practical. I'm reading your book and I'm like, I want this. How would you start with someone coming into your practice? Where does this start, and how do you think about that process?
So when I first started practice, the first year of practice, I've been a natural exerciser my entire life. When I first started, every patient I saw, I wanted them to be as enthusiastic about exercise. I wanted them to do marathons and triathlons and everything. And the reality is that people don't. So we had to downscale it to the point of, let's get someone moving wherever they can start. So we just try and get them to verbally, or try to get them to commit to something. Same as with your app, they have to tick a box and create an urgency. It's an accountability. And once they understand that the accountability is there from a place of love and humility, like I really want to help you as a patient, not like just do the exercises because it's like good for you. So education without love and accountability is also like a bit pointless. Like we all have ChatGPT now. If you want education, it's free. But without the accountability, it doesn't help. So where do we start with the patient? Wherever they can commit. If it's 10-minute walking 2 times a week, that's perfectly fine. We can start there. And we create a little movement habit. And then I wish I coined this term, but someone said it the other day, you habit stack. So once someone's doing 10 minutes twice a week, they could easily do a third session. Or they could do 12 minutes, And then from there, you can build up incrementally and you can grade the exposure. So we're all familiar with the term graded exposure, but for the people who are listening, graded exposure in manual therapy terms and in doctor terms is where you incrementally increase the load so that the brain doesn't get scared of the movement. It respects it, but it's not scared of it. Because as soon as the brain tries to protect, you go half a step backwards because the body's trying to prevent damage. But if you roughly 14 to 15% novelty is the sweet spot where it's not too much damage for the brain or like too much newness, and the brain won't protect you too much, and you can incrementally build up from there.
And I mean, something as simple as walking for 10 minutes. I think people mustn't underestimate the value in that. I mean, that recent study that came out about the step count showed that if you move your step from 2,000 steps to 7,000 steps a day, there's a 43% less chance of all-cause mortality. So the health benefit moving from an unfit position to just a slightly more is massive. So never underestimate that slow progress, and you're actually going to get a lot of health benefit from that.
100% agreed. And as you know, humans are difficult. Like we're dealing with people, and there's different psychology, different histories, different everything. And some people, so like for people who are doing nothing, the 10 minutes walking is a massive step and it's a big one. But for some people who are already doing exercise, like we can obviously scale theirs like differently, So then we see of the 4 movement pillars, which ones are they not doing? And we start to introduce those microscopically without changing the routine too much, and we can just try and get an almost even weighting to all four pillars.
And how? So do you do a basic fitness movement assessment first up? So you get like a bit of an idea where they are. The question for me, how it came out the biggest now is with prescribing GLP-1s to patients.
Yeah.
And you see them now, you weigh them and you say, but you're going to be 10 kilograms lighter in 3 months. They're like, no ways. And when they see themselves in the mirror in 3 months' time, they're like, wow, okay, I can do this. And then they can go off these drugs. But for them to see themselves in a different way 3 months later is such a shock to their system almost, that they're like, that's where I was. So do you have a weight of how you see them now, that they can see against my peers and this is where I'm going to be? Or how do you get that, what's the word I'm looking for? Buy-in is probably.
Correct. So I would say there's probably a 50-50 weighting in my practice with pain management and then the longevity focus. Unfortunately, because things cost money and I'm in private practice, people only come to see you when they're in pain. So I'm 99% of the time, even though there's an even weighting in the practice, 99% of the patients come because they're in pain. If we can get them out of pain and get them moving properly, then most of them transition to the longevity plan, which is essentially just having accountability check-ins, like an app, but they come to see me. I'm in person. So we're busy trying to develop exactly what you said. So I don't have a textbook one now, but when you see a patient who's in pain, we're doing the orthopedic testing, and like that almost becomes its own measurement tool, because some people can't do some movements. So we're trying to get the patient back to even playing field first. Then from there, if your question is, then what do we do? Then there's some cool metrics. It's the dead hang test, the single leg wall squats. We've got side plank with your leg in the air. So there's some cool measurable time kind of parameters. So, but those aren't set in stone yet. I'm still busy trying to find out which are the best longevity tools.
And it's literally, for me, that simple. That video that went around a while ago is that the old man test of trying to put on a sock while you're on one foot.
Leg,
and it is literally, someone needs to keep you accountable to do that type of stuff. So, because coming back to why the three of us are here, is we are thinking we should have people still moving very well at 80 years old.
Yeah.
And it's possible.
I must say also with the testing, and one of the things that we realize is balance. What a big issue balance is. If you don't test it, you don't actually know you've lost some balance during the years. So that's one of the things that we see quite often.
Correct. And in the UK, there's an aging population. So, falls is a massive thing, especially when there's icy sidewalks and that, falling and balance is a big part of our functional testing. We just do a classic old school Y test. So you can measure on single leg how far someone can touch in all the Y parameters, how far they can touch the ground, two hands, and then behind them. And that's just a nice baseline, because in 6 to 8 weeks, most people improve, right? But it's quite addictive for a patient to see improvement, It gives them some motivation. Cool, this is actually working, as opposed to just being out of pain or not in pain. So it's just about trying to educate people to get your spine and your brain checked before it becomes an issue. And it sounds so obvious, right? My dad had his routine colonoscopy done 2 years ago, and they routinely found stage 1 colon cancer. Cut it out, he's actually all fine now, but it was a routine thing, no pain, no symptoms. So we mentioned about disc injuries. In 2017, the Spine Journal, they brought out the study with MRI studies of people with no pain, so asymptomatic patients, and they MRI'd everyone. And by the age of 40, there was a 50% chance of you having disc issues, no pain. So that's quite an alarming stat, right? So 50% of 40-year-olds should be at least doing something because they probably have a disc issue. No pain. And to say that, it sounds like you're fear-mongering someone, like you're saying, oh, well, you probably have a bad back, you should probably see someone. But no, it's like the exact same phrase of you have a bad back, you should probably see someone. If it's coming from a place of love, might motivate someone to actually do it. And it's a fine line, trying to motivate someone, and that it's not just about money or them coming back to see you. It is tough, because ultimately I do want to see someone more, potentially, but I want to see them because they want to see me, not that they necessarily need to see me. So we try and flip that like coin where patients want to see you as opposed to like they always coming back because you feared them into saying, listen, if you don't see me, your back will explode. It's a thing of trying to prevent the degeneration from getting worse at a rate.
Agreed. Yeah. I want to come back to you saying you haven't worked it all out. I do think you've worked out quite a nice mnemonic of how people should be thinking about exercise. I really like that lens. And maybe how did you get to that? And because I mean, I can see where we fit in quite a few of those areas, but it's quite cool that you've actually made a mnemonic of it.
Brilliant. So the lens principle, LENDS, was actually from the 2016 paper by Joyce Schaefer. So it was around the 2014, 15, 16 time when my whole practice was changing from pain focus to longevity. And the only way that you can do that is by knowing how the brain works. So the Joyce Schaefer paper came out, and she had these 5 pillars, not in a mnemonic form. So I just kind of put it into like a bite-sized thing of like, it lends to your health to focus on these 5 things. So we've like structured it into the analogy of a seesaw. If your seesaw is tilting in one direction, you're essentially always getting worse in your health, like wear and tear, stress, etc. And the things that tilt it in the positive way is lens. So the lens, LENDS, L stands for love. And again, like when you start off with that, excuse me, it sounds quite cheesy, right? But that's what life's about, you know. People get better for people. And without the enjoyment and the gratitude and a reason to get better, I've never seen anyone get better if they haven't got a reason to get better for. So the love encompasses joy, not just happiness, you know, like real, true contentment. Without that, I don't think anyone's brain will last long, you know. It is that serious, I think. So LENDS, love. E is exercise. I'm sure we'll touch on the 4 pillars again later, but exercise, movement, medicine, non-negotiable really. N is the newness and the novelty. If your brain's never learning something new, it will just waste away and die. The example is the koala bear. You know, they've evolved over time where their brain is the smallest in comparison to their body, because all they do is sit in a eucalyptus tree and eat food. So as soon as you stop giving the brain new stimulus, it will stop growing. So that's a big one. And then we can apply that to all fields of health and movement. You know, we have to introduce new movement patterns, keep the brain guessing, and it will want to actually develop over time. So that's the N. D is diet. This is your guys' expertise, I suppose. But it's what you do and what you don't put into your mouth. So obviously there's really good supplements that you guys speak a lot about, which is great. Supplementation helps, but sometimes people have to just stop putting X, Y, and Z into their mouth. But again, this is a big field. So that's diet. And then S is sleep. And I think it's become popular these days to sleep well, which is great. But yes, like good quality deep sleep is essential. Is there equal weighting on all of these? From a longevity point of view, I'd say yes. You know, like obviously sleep is essential. If you don't sleep, eventually you will die. If you don't do new things, like you won't necessarily die, but your brain will die slowly. So I would say that there is probably equal weighting on those from a longevity movement point of view. So yeah, we try and teach people about those 5 principles.
I'm so glad we moved away from I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
I mean, that mentality was just crazy. But anyway, yeah, everybody's talking about sleep these days. And we often say that is our superpower. Sleep is your superpower. You need to do that.
100% to say.
Going back to the L, love, I think that is, we do it in our practice as well. If we get someone there that we see some red flags in their health, it's usually the conversation is there's kids and do you want to see your kids grow up? Do you know, there's always motivation factors that you bring into the equation to get them compliant on what needs to be done to get them better.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. our assessment actually starts by you getting forms to fill in, but in there we hide the questions of doing a WHO5 and an Adams score and all that, and then you plug it in so you can get a feeling before seeing a client for the first time how their love piece actually is. So it's quite interesting. I was just thinking while you were talking about the D. That's quite a nice thing we've done, and you can maybe use that when you go back. As we've iron is quite a big part of our diet, and half of women being iron deficient. So we've just put a questionnaire together on our website. But I love the mnemonic, and it fits in so well with what we do. So yeah, and it's quite interesting though. If you think about medicine, a big part of what we do, the biochemical stuff, actually is only that little piece. I mean, it doesn't fit in L, it doesn't really fit in the E, newness also. So diet and there maybe is biochemically is where most of our conventional medicine fits, which is actually not what makes you live long. I mean, we can test and all that, but once you've taken the cholesterol and blood pressure and all that, then lens is number one in your whole system.
Correct.
Okay, but sorry, I'm ranting on about lens, but I want to come back to exercise. And so, of the 4 pillars, you've had one really strong one doing triathlon. So I mean, that's the big engine. So it'll be interesting from your view, from as a triathlete growing up, chiropractor, and how you now, number one, think about that exercise and how you test before you send someone out where to look for help. So we talked about the 4 pillars. So maybe just how in your mind you put the 4 pillars together.
Yeah. So I try and tick off all 4 for myself every week. So I'll speak about my personal exercise regime first. So yeah, endurance has always been easy for me. Being an endurance athlete growing up, it was always just like running, cycling, swimming, like it's easy. So like in terms of like trying to get 180 minutes a week of zone 2 type exercise, for me, that's easy. For some people, that's impossible, or at least very hard. So for me, the endurance is easy. I had to consciously do the strength. I was never doing strength because of the fear of getting too heavy to cycle and like run fast. So I only started doing gym at like sort of university level. Then flexibility. Traditionally, runners and cross-country runners are the worst, I mean, like you do a little bit of like stretching after a run, but that's it, So that was something I had to consciously work on. And then proprioception and the whole balance sense, I've only really taken seriously now since I've been aging into my 30s, because I actually realized that I was starting to get running injuries, and it was quite simple down to not enough proprioception exercises. My tendons were just overusing because the stability wasn't there. So for me personally, I've had to now change my whole training mechanism, and I try and use my example to patients. Try to do something for endurance every week, try and do something for strength every week, and then try and do something for the mobility and the balance every week. I think mobility and balance is a nice one to do together. You can do balance obviously throughout your day as a movement snack. It's a nice sort of term, but if you're looking at the yoga, Pilates, biokineticist, specialist, rehab stuff, that will tick a lot of the mobility and balance box. Strength is just lifting some old school weights, and then the endurance. And from a strength point of view, we've put together the Move Med 8, trying to make that a phrase, but it's the big 8 movement patterns, which are push, pull, lift. Those are like the big 3, so to say, push, pull, lift. And then especially in terms of spinal strength, we have the other 5, which is your calf raise and your tib ant raise. That's number 4 and 5. Then we've got spinal flexion and extension. A lot of people are scared to flex and bend their spines. And that fear of movement, I think, actually is a big cause of people's pain because they're trying to avoid it so much that it gets weak. We've got spinal rotation and lateral bending. And then we've got the split squat. So that's obviously hip extension with hip flexion.
Mhm.
And so those are the eight movement patterns that we recommend in clinic for a strong back at least long term. So patients, I think that there's such a broad range of patients. I see babies to grandparents. So we just see for the individual, where can they introduce some movement, and whatever they can do, we'll see how many of those pillars we can stack without them getting too overwhelmed that now this is now a stressful thing for me to do my exercise. It must become a part of life. So it's a bit of a boring answer for you, sorry, but I think we just, each person's individual, and we meet them where they are and see what we can add to their personal life.
I want to, where you mentioned that endurance came like naturally for you. So to do the 180 minutes, zone 2 training, you find it easy. But for a lot of people, that's a challenge to get 180 minutes, like zone 2 training in, and then do the strength training and do the flexibility. And we all struggle with that. And then recently they've published some papers overstating the effectiveness of HIIT versus zone 2. And I think a guy like Peter here has broken that down nicely, showing that zone 2 is still so important. I've also read in your book about the zone 2, and we're big fans of zone 2 training. So I don't know if you want to touch on how important that part of the exercise is, and that it forms part of the whole picture.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was in 2018, but they did that SMILE study, which was exercise versus medication for chronic depression. And it basically came out that the exercise was as effective as antidepressants, which is great. So that's awesome. But the range of exercise was actually from 0 to 180 minutes. So for me, the 180 is what I kind of try and reach for me personally. But even if you're doing 12 minutes a week, I think 12 minutes is kind of the bare minimum. But so it is a big spectrum. Some people just genuinely don't enjoy exercise. Like, I have to beg my wife to exercise. Like, she doesn't necessarily love it, But if we can trick someone into doing something like inception, trying to plant a seed that makes them want to do it. I get my patients in the UK, everyone's got some kind of stationary bicycle or something in the UK. I just say to them, get on the bike and watch one episode of TV every week on the bike, So we try and trick them into doing some exercise, and then it becomes a bit of, eventually the brain wants to do it.
I think that's
then
one
of
the few things that actually works that way.
Yeah. Because I think inherently the brain eventually craves the exercise. Then they might start doing it out of their choice, as opposed to just doing it for me, or their spouse, or like whoever. But back onto the zone 2, my book I wrote in 2019 came out in 2020. At the time, heart rate was a big thing in exercise. So I would base my zone 2 on a rough percentage of maximum heart rate. But that's, I think, the true way to see if you're in that LT1 is by doing blood tests.
Yeah. So
you check your lactate during exercise. Now, the average person is not going to be pricking their ear while they're cycling in their home, But the zone 2, roughly to me, makes sense that it's a talking pace exercise. So if you're doing a jog or a cycle or a brisk walk, you're still able to talk without getting too out of breath. So it's a bit more brisk than a walk, but it's easier than a full-blown run where you're actually gasping for your breath. So the zone 2 is a recovery exercise phase. So theoretically, you could do a lot of it in a week. Even if you have niggles, the zone 2 exercise shouldn't make it worse. So I cycle a lot still. My knees and my patellas are always a little bit sensitive, probably a little bit inflamed. But I know that zone 2 exercise won't make that worse. And even though my knee might be a little bit like having a bad week, I know that if I do my 1 hour easy run, it actually loosens it up. Whereas before, like, why on earth would you run if your knee's sore? But the zone 2 is almost a treatment on its own. So again, as an educational tool, it's cool to, it's good to tell patients that, because a lot of people are in pain and they're like, well, I don't do exercise because I'm in pain. But if you don't do exercise, you will never get out of pain. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the thinking on that moved on in the sense that you do need to move now. In the old days, it's, sit still, don't move, wait for it to heal. But now we fortunately moving into a direction where you want to move to make it better.
Correct. And movement for the brain health, as we've already said with Lens, it's essential, but movement and exercise therapy, like if you want to call movement exercise therapy, in terms of a manual therapy practice, any manual therapy practice, if you aren't getting someone moving, the gains will never consolidate. Like you'll just go back into your old movement pattern if you don't move. Simple as that.
Because our clientele is, most of them fall within the 35 to 55, maybe 60 group, but 35, 55. And if you go look at their exercise regimes, I think about 80% of the people exercise in zone 3. That's the typical thing. Like, you can ask them about the exercise patterns, but there's very few of them that actually do dedicated zone 2 and then the dedicated like red zone training effectiveness. And if you do have a look at their blood works, often you'll see the CRPs raised, the inflammatory parameters. And then one of the conversations we have then is like, okay, step down a little bit, do the green zone and do the red zone, but stay out of that orange zone type in the middle.
100%. And I think it's like once those like zone 3ers actually just try it for 6 weeks and they train slower, they feel better, they get faster, they have less injuries, their blood work gets better, then they believe you. But if you just tell them as their specialist doctor, if like you tell them, listen, you are training too hard, they actually won't believe you until they experience it for themselves, which is the frustrating part.
And I think I had a client this morning actually say to me, he said, I really felt the shift between 30 and 35. I can suddenly not do what I could as a 20 to 30-year-old, because there you get away with doing the wrong thing. So exercising in this funny zones, your body can just take it. But then there's a physiological shift after 30. We say 35. In our biochemical markers, we see that shift from 35 onwards. There's a big shift in especially how men operate. But and that's when people feel it and they get injuries because they push that body in the wrong zones. And if our clients listening or whoever's listening to the podcast take one thing away, is maybe think about movement is medicine. Pull that out and say, how am I moving? How has my body changed that I maybe need to see someone to give me that? Okay, but test me to see where I am, number one, and give some advice on that. Because there are people all around the world. You South African, but you are in the UK, and you can give advice. Yeah. So that's.
I agree, and I think that knowing your numbers is important, right? So you guys specialize in, at least your company specializes in knowing your numbers from a blood work point of view. From a movement point of view, find someone who can keep you accountable, who can get a baseline for you, and even if you have 2 months, 6 month kind of checkups, you're at least over a period of time, your graph is going upwards. Too often, people's graphs just stagnate between 30, 40, 50. People stagnate, no major symptoms, but things are happening under the hood, so to say.
Yeah.
So before you get symptoms, before you feel low testosterone, before you feel mild depression symptoms, before you get aches and pains, see someone, speak up, especially the men.
Again, I want to come back a little bit to your practice. If you see a longevity client, how long would that assessment be? Is it an hour? Is it half an hour? How long does it take? I imagine you with this PDF that you've made, because you've got all this information that you actually go, okay, but on my 4 areas that I think about, how do you go through that? Is it how long and what does it look like?
Yeah, so we've also got the pre-consultation paperwork. So that's where you can see which patients put in lots of details. Some people just go quick, like 1-word answers. But yes, the first session we book for at least a full hour. again, lots of my patients are in pain. So the first part of treatment is just getting them moving again. We are busy still trying to see what the sweet spot is from a longevity point of view, because as I said, like we don't necessarily meet the longevity patient at the moment because people come in with pain focus. But once patients have the long-term mindset, I see people they want to book themselves in every 3 to 12 weeks. Some people are a bit more needy physically, mentally, but yeah, like I see a chiropractor every 2 months for myself. He's a South African friend of mine, but we make time to see each other. I've got not much symptoms, hardly any, but I still see him. We make the time. We commit to it because I know that when I see him, I'm like, oh, Murray, I actually feel fine. But he'll find trigger points that I didn't know even existed, because the body's often showing you signs of protection without pain.
So I assume, seeing patients with pain most of the time or initial contact, lower back pain, the most common complaint, or in your practice, what do you, if you need to do a thumbs up thing, what is the most common presenting pain symptom?
Yes, lower back is the most common. Lower back is the most common. And then the next most common, I'd say, is neck and headaches together, neck pain, headaches. And then I would just say sports injuries, which is mostly hip, knee, lower limb stuff.
Okay.
So
and lower back problems that you see, how often is it a medical issue? Mostly movement issues, or
mostly movement, disc, so like mechanical back pain. In the UK, the system's a little bit different to South Africa. The medical stuff won't often come to me. I can count on my hand how many times I've seen a back pain that's actually been full blown cancer. That is rare, but it does happen, of course. So that's where the assessments are so important. Constitutional symptoms that start creeping in, uncharacteristic stuff, a new pain over the age of 50, So normally, touch wood, hopefully all the big medical stuff doesn't actually come and see you. But we have had those cases, and they always make you skrik a bit, makes you nervous. Yeah.
In your book, you've got the remove, and then move again. So what is that principle?
So that's where I've been trying to develop a system that can be used by any manual therapist, whether it's osteopaths in UK, chiropractors, biokinesticists, physios. It's just a bit of a structure to the biopsychosocial model. So it actually did start off as just a three-pronged attack, where you remove what's causing the mechanical issue, if it's mechanical. So you remove the cause, then you remove the body, movement again, and then moving forward is then obviously exercise therapy. So those three pillars do fit also quite neatly with the sort of big clinic pillars of education. You can educate someone as to what is the underlying causes and risk factors. Then the removing is often manual hands-on treatment. Sometimes you need some physical help for the trigger points, the tight muscles, joint mechanics, etc. And then the move is essentially just moving forward. And then, probably just because I'm a bit of a nerd, we've extrapolated that into a 10-level system. But it's on a baseline level, the remove, and move, we call that protocol the neural re-education, because everything is brain related. So we need to assist and reteach the brain non-painful movement. That's essentially what any manual therapist does, right? Is teach you how to move again, pain-free. And we have some cool neurological tricks that we can do, with the block work, these little novel movement snacks. And what they are actually doing is teaching the brain pain-free movement, and eventually the brain can learn the new non-painful movement, and it actually unlearns the painful one. Because chronic pain, it might be good for the actual listeners to understand that chronic pain is often a maladaption plasticity, where you've actually been having the discomfort and then it became pain, so incremental over so many years that that's become its own memory. So the brain is expecting painful movement before it even tries tries to move. So we're trying to prevent that from happening. So we're unlearning the painful movement while we're learning new pain-free movement. If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. My brother is a hip orthopod. He was on the podcast before, and he says it's quite interesting when you do a hip replacement, people don't expect to be moving normally. You have to almost teach them again that they don't have to move with pain. It's
100%.
Another part, almost like sleep has caught on quite a bit in people's thinking, is feet movement. So feet as the base of what you do. So where do you stand with thinking on how do you train? Can you train your feet? Do you have to train barefoot? Do you have to stand barefoot? Have you got any view on that? Or
Yeah, feet is very important. We assess them every patient. I've transitioned into barefoot style shoes, so 0 drop, wide toe box, mobile sole. I've transitioned to that, but if you do that, you have to do it so slowly, as you know. Like you can't go from raised heel to flat shoes overnight. That Achilles tendon will explode. So being able to be barefoot is a good goal for some patients, just being able to be barefoot naturally pain-free is a really good goal, because shoes and heel raises and arch supports affect our gait completely. It affects how like some people think, cool, I have flat feet, we need to get the arch support in. That's great short term, but there has to be an exit strategy to getting as much natural function back as possible. So again, a bit of a boring answer for you, but some people who are 80 years old won't transition to barefoot shoes easily, at least. It is possible, but not easily. But the younger you can to get your feet as strong as possible, the better for you. Our hands and our feet on paper should be as functionally like we should be able to do what we can with our feet with our hands. How many people can write their name with their foot? No one. And if you think about it, when your foot grabs the ground, it's the first point of contact of any gait, So if you're walking, so you can imagine if an arch is weak or if there's some pain in a joint or a loss of movement, as soon as that foot lands, there's already a compensatory pattern happening up the entire chain, which is detrimental. I mean, I see lots of knee pain, hip, lower back, and we can often, by taking away a few layers, we can often get back to say, oh, wow, it was actually a weak arch or weak arches or poor foot mechanics that caused the back pain.
And a lot of your proprioception actually comes from how those little joints are actually being stretched. So, the fall risk or the balance comes back into play there as well.
100%, yes. So equal weighting on balance training, and it's got to do with if you can, as you're getting older, breaking your hip and your femur is pretty common. If you fall, you want to try and avoid that. Because ballparking it, you're like taking away 5 to 10 years of your enjoyment of life if you break your hip after 60.
And then
roughly.
A practical point back to the strengthening of the feet. Is it just to walk barefoot, or any specific foot exercises that you need to do for the general person that doesn't necessarily have an issue?
Yeah,
it's a difficult one.
It's a good question. Yeah. Some people, when you say to them, be barefoot, especially in the UK, because it's cold, so everyone's got their shoes on all the time. So you tell people, be more, just for now, get barefoot a bit more. Get some sensation back in the feet, get the foot mobile, get the Achilles stretching. So often just as a rehab, getting barefoot is a nice rehab tool. But in terms of strengthening, we've got, sometimes you actually recommend those toe spaces to kind of force some toe splay. And then, in South Africa, I'd refer to the bios because they would be able to do lots of hands-on rehab with the patient. In the UK, we've got no bio or rehab specialists. So, we just normally send them to our YouTube channel. We have a few proprioceptive exercises there. Just get people trying some single leg balancing exercises, building some capacity in the foot. Yeah.
So, if we think about in your practice every day, not for pain, maybe more for the longevity side, what do you think the biggest myth that people believe is?
Probably the biggest myth is that your pain is directly proportional to tissue damage. And that is 100% not true. You know, I've had patients in excruciating pain for literally a little muscle spasm, because it's been such a new thing to them, and their brain is freaked out, and they are literally in agony, bent over, and they've got nothing wrong with them structurally, just a bit of spasm. On the other spectrum, we've had patients with mild, dull aches come and see you. They have cancer, you know, or they just have a massive, nice big blueberry disc bulge, but they've got some mild pain. So that's a big myth, that you have to wait for pain to see someone. See someone as soon as you can do it, or at least as soon as you can afford to do it. Find someone who you trust and get moving.
Interesting. I wanted to ask, if someone wants to get hold of you, do you have a space in the book that you say, okay, but you can find me on YouTube or at my website, or how do people get hold of you?
Yeah, so at the back of the book is my details. But yeah, MoveMed is the brand. So the website is movemed.co.uk. My social media hashtags is MoveMedUK. And yeah, once you're on any of those pages, they all circle back to the website or the bio link. Yeah, at the moment we offer online and in-person consultations. But yeah, hopefully one day we'll be offering some courses and that kind of stuff for people who just want to learn about their like brain and their bodies, you know. I've only dabbled in the social media for the last year, and it's been a very humbling experience. The page has gained some nice growth, which has been awesome. But the amount of like messages that you get from people saying, wow, thank you, you've changed my life, just by doing a bit of block work or some random demonstration. And they're like, wow, my pain from 20 years has gone. No one could have fixed it. I'm like, the point is, once you understand why the brain works, any new novel movement pattern has the potential to help your debilitating pain. So yeah, we're in the business of helping people for free. And indirectly that becomes business, because people want to potentially see you because they actually know that you're an ethical person trying to help them. So our business model is very countercultural. We try and help people for largely free. I mean, like all the education's free, mostly. And yeah, in turn, people want to see you. So,
and I think most of our listeners are, I would guess, about 85% South African, but there's a big part of London that's South African. So there's a good connection there, that people can listen to the podcast, hear our podcast to find you. I just want to quickly touch on that. You can maybe just tell us you interviewed your brother on your own podcast. What was that all about?
Yeah, so the book is Why Movement is Medicine. We've done the first episode of the Why Movement is Medicine podcast, and it's just going to be random people who have perhaps used movement and exercise in their life somewhere. So my brother was my first guest. He's also an orthopedic surgeon. But yeah, he was also a world champ in his sport back in the day. And yeah, it was, so yeah, it might not become a more formal thing. Hopefully get a sponsor or two. We'll see, hint, hint. But yeah, hopefully just interview people and just give, again, education and motivation, get people moving. It really is the cheesiest thing. I wrote this book to get people moving. It changed my entire life. It's changed my parents' life, my brother's life. Yeah, get people moving. Life is short. You must move.
Great.
Good. Well done on the book.
And
thanks,
yeah,
Doc.
Amazing. And I think exactly what you're saying there, and I think that's what keeps us going as well. That most of the people that we've touched with InnerSight has become better, and you see them getting better, and then they send people and they're getting better, and that's actually why we exist, is people are getting better for what we do. So
100%.
Well done for what you're doing, and thank you for coming in. I haven't read the book yet, but I will. And yeah, good luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you for having me, Docs. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Disclaimer. This podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of your healthcare provider. No doctor-patient relationship has been formed through this podcast. The content here is for information purposes only.